has been there since the early 1800s, so we've been there for quite some time. Over the summer, I've seen some recent activity on the road, some drilling and whatnot, and they were doing geotechnical review, I believe, for a proposed sewer expansion. So that stemmed my curiosity, so I later called the Public Works Department, and I was speaking to a fellow by the name of Larry Hood. And Larry informed me that there is a sewer expansion that is going to extend past the proposed Chester Hills development, and it would also include a pumping station. And this pumping station is located directly in front of my land. It's in an odd spot because I don't know if any of you remember, I'm not old enough to remember, but in the 70s, the road took a different swing where it comes around the brook. Then they widened the road and it created this odd shaped piece of land directly in front of my property, which is basically where I understand that this thing is proposed to be put. I don't know the exact location within that little spot because I haven't seen any drawings.
Well, quite frankly, I haven't either.
Yeah, so anyways, I have two concerns about this whole sewer expansion. One is the location of the pumping station itself. That road alignment is basically my road frontage that comes along there. Having a structure located in this area would potentially limit my access to the road. I've been restoring my home for a number of years, and it's my intention to possibly do something with it again. It was an inn. I've been thinking about doing a bed and breakfast or something like that. There's a potential that I may need secondary access for fire or for parking, something along those lines. So it kind of restricts my access to that. I don't know how much space this thing is going to take.
This piece of land, do you?
I don't. It's owned by the province because it's the road alignment.
Oh, okay.
So they never really changed their boundary when they realigned the road. They just kept their setback from the road where it was.
Yeah, okay.
The other concern I have about this particular area where it's proposed is it's flooded twice in the last 10 years to the point where the road has become completely impassable. So I have concerns what would happen to a pumping station if it was put there and subjected to floods. And I think that this could also be an issue for the municipality's insurer. I don't know how that goes, but I know that recently in other municipalities they have been having some issues with municipalities building infrastructure in areas that are known to flood.
Well, that's becoming an increasing concern.
Yes, and as we go on. So anyways, with this pumping station in front of me, I'm also being encroached on two sides of my property. On the north side, I'm going to be encroached with little to no setback whatsoever from my boundary to the Chester Hills development. So I have them encroaching me completely on one side. Then on my south side, it's proposed that there's going to be a pumping station put there, further encroaching me on that side. So basically, should the sewer ever be expanded, I know I was speaking briefly with Sharon about this, and from what I understand is drawings were done up for funding. So that we basically, whoever needs to know what the funding is for knows what it's proposed for.
Yeah.
So from what I understand, this isn't set in stone, and there could be a possibility of looking at a different place to relocate the pumping station to. I know that area of the road's relatively flat. I know there's issues with some grades, but it could go in multiple areas along the road. The second concern I have with the sewer expansion is access to the sewer in general. So from what I understand in speaking with Public Works, anytime that a sewer line passes in front of somebody's house, whether I want it or not, they show me connecting to a sewer that I don't need. And even if I don't want to connect to it, there's a possibility that I may have to pay a fee to connect to something that I'm not even going to use.
Yes, that is correct.
And then
It's possible.
It's possible, and then also have that reflected on my yearly taxes as well as another service that I'm not using. I and my neighbors, and I know some of the other people on the road, have no need to access a sewer whatsoever. We have our own systems. I recently put mine in, a brand new system in 2018. And from what I understand, I don't know if the sewer is going to be going back this road or not, because I think this hinges on what Chester Hills is doing with their development.
There's some pieces of it that are up in the air, there's no question about that. And just on the fee,
Yeah,
in some cases, we do charge a fee even though you're not hooked up, and in some cases, we do not, and we haven't made that decision yet.
okay.
And I've been down that road before. People whose sewers work don't want central sewer, people
No.
who don't work do want central sewer.
Yeah, no, and that's understandable for someone that doesn't need it. I don't believe that they should have to pay to access something that they're not gonna use. And in all honesty, I think that if there wasn't proposed developments like Chester Hills wanting to have access to the sewer, there'd be no need and nobody'd be even looking at putting the sewer down this road.
It's one of the things that we've considered, there's no question
Okay.
about it.
Yeah, so with that, and the access to the sewer, everybody on the road has their own disposal fields. We've had them for decades. From what I know, there's been no environmental issues with any fields that I'm aware of, other than Julian's Bakery, which had some technical issues, and I understand that they've been resolved. But my home is also situated on a large piece of land, so for me to have to my home is located on a large piece of land, so it allows me to not interfere with any other wells or septics just because of how far my septic is set back from everybody else, right? And then, I guess would be a third concern, was with any of this, it's just a general lack of communication with the extent of the expansion. I mean, nobody on our road knew that this was going to be extended to this extent, pumping stations and whatnot. Basically, I just had to see somebody drilling down on the road and, out of my own curiosity, go and figure out what was going on. Right?
We don't usually go door to door, at least until we exactly know what we're doing.
Yeah.
I mean, we've discussed this in public session, I guess
Yep.
is all I can say, you know.
But my concern is once you exactly know what you're doing, is it gonna be too late for me to have any public input on it, right? That's where.
Well, we intend to build it. The concerns you brought forward, I'm gonna ask staff to speak to and address and see whether there's a way to resolve it. Well, that's what I can tell you.
Okay. Other than that, I don't have anything else, and I'm assuming you guys are going to record all of this in the minutes?
It's recorded live as you speak.
Okay. All right.
Okay, so just so you know, we will get staff to address these concerns and tell us what the options are
Yeah,
and communicate to you.
okay.
Okay?
Awesome.
Thank you. Peggy.
Hi, good morning. My name is Peggy Wilson. I live on Main Street and I have lived in Chester for 35 years. I am here today to discuss the issues that I have with the process of granting a permit for the proposed hotel on Valley Road. This will come as no surprise to Councillor Wells, as I've expressed my opinion to him in the past. Also, it will come as no surprise to the municipality's development officer, as our discussion has been ongoing since early 2022. I respect those who put themselves forward in service of our community, whether they're an elected employee or a municipal government, representative. If my tone comes across differently, it's frustration, not disrespect. I'm going to share a brief timeline that will give you some insight as to the unnecessary frustration that has led to the aggrieved feelings that I, as well as many of my neighbors, are experiencing. In April 2022, I went to the planning department to inquire about a demolition of a house on Valley Road. I was told that a development permit had been granted, but no additional information was available. By early May, the rumor mill was rife about a 31-room hotel. Again, I went to the planning department and was informed that that was in fact true, but there was no additional information. May 8th, I wrote to Councillor Wells asking for assistance in obtaining information about the development. In that email, I stated I was not opposed to the hotel, but needed clarification on several concerns, which I broke down into water, sewer, streetscape, noise, many items, so he would know where I was coming from. I received no response. On May 18th, I attended a presentation of Build Form Character Defining Elements Study for the Village of Chester. In that document, that resulted in what we heard, it was stated for the new commercial uses, i.e. the proposed hotel, look to encourage something that reflects the village, not a generic chain concept style. After that meeting, I again sent an email to Derek Wells. Again, no response. At that point, I completed an online form under the Freedom of Information Act requesting information on that hotel. When the request was received by the municipality, I was contacted by Mr. Dan Pittman, records manager, informing me that my request was unnecessary as the information package was available to the public from the planning department. At that point, I was given a picture of the proposed hotel, configurations of the rooms and apartments, as well as elevation. Nothing more was available. In the initial email I sent to Mr. Wells, I stated I was not opposed to the hotel and that I believed Chester was in need of additional accommodations. I was straightforward in my request, asking if he could get clarification on the development and if he could meet some neighbors to discuss the project and alleviate some concerns and queries. With no response, my only avenue with additional information was to speak to the development officer. This was an eye-opening experience, as I expected more. In my opinion, it is their primary function to ensure all surrounding properties are considered when granting permits for new developments. Not so. I was informed that the development met the requirements, so the permit was no further consultation was required. Meeting the base requirements under the land use bylaw guidelines, that's all that's needed. There should always be an option to decline a development if it is not in the best interest of the village or simply not suited to a particular property. No consultation with council and no regard was given to how this development could greatly affect our neighborhood. Surprising, given that this proposed hotel could be the biggest development in Chester in the past 25 years. That was very disappointing. Going forward, the land use bylaws need to be stipulated that the project and residents, rather than offer loopholes to developers and to a development officer that simply shrugs her shoulders and says there's nothing she can do. As a resident, I find that unacceptable. I was told by the development officer that neither Chester's council nor councillor were ever consulted on this project before the permit was granted. Heather Archibald stated that it was solely her call as a development officer to grant the permit. By her own admission, Heather Archibald said in a meeting to me on July 31st that the planning department plays at being the devil's advocate when looking at any amendments or granting permits to see how people can skirt the rules so they can understand where problems might arise. I'm astonished that not one person in that entire group could see that this was going to be a huge issue for the neighbors. Not once was it considered to pass this up to the chain, to take counsel from council in this regard. Heather went even further by insinuating it was our lack of being informed that led to this situation, as the property was zoned commercial and there could have been a hotel built there 20 years ago. I was fully aware that this particular property was commercial, but why in a million years would I ever consider a hotel would be proposed for that property, given that reports commissioned by the municipality led us to believe that a development of that size would not be considered given the village water situation. When I asked the development officer if there was an appeal process that could be explored in regards to the hotel permit, she informed me that there was not. I'm astonished that there is not. In the draft of the revised land use bylaw, it is stated that, depending on the approval process, some decisions of the development officer can be appealed either to council or to the Nova Scotia Utility Review Board as specified in the Municipal Government Act. Was that just written into the Government Act, or was it an omission from our existing land use bylaw? What I don't understand is, was the development officer misinformed, or we deliberately misled? I think a great deal of the problem now and going forward relates to development permits versus development agreements. This will continue as both are deeply flawed. The development permit, which is up to the development officer, solely based on the land use bylaw and strategic plan. This is where we need to make sure the land use bylaws and strategic plans are tightened up to ensure that there are checks and balances. Can you imagine that even in the proposed secondary draft plan, there is no requirements for any green technology, any catchment systems, nothing other than a well to be used for the development? I lived in Brisbane, where if a developer was starting a new development, they had to add to public art in the city. We can't even ask that they respect our scarce natural resource of water. The development agreement, which is council-driven with community input. There are 6 MODC councillors to Chester's only 1 councillor. This poses a great risk to those who live in the village. Any of the discussion during community involvement sessions is basically out the window when councillors from outside the village voted development through regardless of what the village residents want. Chester is a cash cow and has always been seen as such. Given this, I don't think our best interests are always taken into consideration. I'm asking that you seriously consider the part we've all played in this situation. From the time the development permit was granted in April 2022 to June 28, 2023, when the building permit was granted. You had ample time to address situations, but you chose not to. You've created more angst by not being open, by not having a discussion with the residents of Chester, the people who were asking for discussion. I am not pointing fingers at Mr. Wells. Each of you has known the concerns that residents have about water and this development and did nothing to alter the course of this situation. There have been conversations about where fault lies in this regard. Make no mistake about it, none of that is directed at the developer. It clearly sits at the feet of council. It is the conclusion of many residents that due diligence was not taken by the planning department or by council to mitigate the fallout of this situation. To date, council has never even acknowledged the hotel. Shame on all of you for allowing this to happen without community input. You would do good to remember that trust lost is hard to regain. And a petition that has circulated recently, the last time I looked, there was 566 signatures on that, and I would guess that there's a lot of people wondering if they trust any decision that can be made going forward. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, that's a lot. In your remarks, and it's very difficult for me to respond completely, but I do want to ask the staff, has a permit been issued for this hotel?
June 28th.
So I'm not the development officer, I'm the planner, so I don't issue these permits.
I know that.
Yes, my understanding is a development permit and a building permit have both been issued. That's been clarified.
I just want to make 100% sure of that, because I'm well aware. And my understanding, just so that I understand it correctly, is that it's zone commercial, and therefore it's a development by right.
Yes.
That's correct.
That's what the planning strategy at the moment, or land use plan says, so that's the process. My understanding in the new planning document, which is also under discussion, not approved by any stretch of the imagination, is suggesting that we go back to development agreement.
Yes.
Which would ensure that the public's engaged, which is what we think should happen. But it was taken out the last time because that is not what the community wanted. So I'm just...
Correct.
So we're trying to put it back into the community is... But other than that, I'm going to have to... have you left a copy of your remarks? Or do we have a copy of it? Because before I can respond any further, I think I need to have a look at them in detail. I'll leave those to you.
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you. Is there anyone else? You didn't have an appointment, but we could.
I just have a request related to the.
Just name and
Sorry, my
city
name
address.
is Shannon Black. I at 65 Duke Street. I have a request for the planning department, which is an annotated copy of the proposed secondary planning strategy and land use bylaws, which shows clearly for residents what portions are taken from the existing documents as they are, what portions are taken from the existing documents or legislation and have been amended, and then what portions are brand new. My understanding from Mr. Sturdivant is that it's about 1/3, 1/3, and 1/3. And it would be very helpful for all of us to be able to track the changes and also understand which ones are more restrictive than the existing, which ones are broader, why the changes are being made. I mean, I was able to attend one of the meetings, but many people were not able to attend any of them. And I still meet people in the village who live here who are full-time residents who have no idea about these changes, the proposed changes. But it would be really helpful to engage people fully right now instead of having to do a kind of hunt to understand what is in existence, what is changing, and what the implications are, and what the incentive is, or what the reason is for the change. Rationale, thank you. So I think there's a great opportunity right now to come up with land use bylaws that are forward-looking, really coherent, and Chester really needs that right now. So I think this could be a really great process if public engagement was effective. And I know that these meetings in the summer were advertised, but I'm going to suggest that the means of advertising is ineffective and should be really reevaluated. I have, since learning about these meetings, subscribed to receive emails. I haven't received any emails. I found out about this morning, this meeting, that the land use bylaw proposed amendments were on the agenda today.
Wow.
I think that there's a serious dysfunction.
They're not on the agenda.
I'm sorry, the letter relating to the public, I mean, same thing, sorry, it's the same thing. I think that, you talked, I heard vaguely from the hallway, there are other people in the hallway who can't fit into the room because attendance is that great today. I heard you say, Mr. Warden, that the hotel, I think, happened because, in accordance with development permit process, because there aren't development agreement processes any longer, because I think the language used among various people involved in the offices here, the municipal offices, is because residents didn't want development agreements anymore. So that, I'm not familiar with that. I wasn't really...
Well, that was years ago.
Exactly, but I think that there is there are misgivings still because of 2004 and going forward, and there is a dysfunction between council, between the municipal offices, and between the residents. And I think there's a really great opportunity right now to open this up to full and complete disclosure and communication, and to create a process that is really effective so that everybody's happy with what we end up with. Or okay, not everybody. That's impossible. I understand.
I don't live in that world.
Yeah, but I think that if council demonstrated a genuine interest in engaging the population and really demonstrating that they're hearing residents, this could go a lot more smoothly.
Okay.
So again, reiterate, a PDF that helps us understand what's on the table here.
Okay, we'll try to get you that to identify this is what used to be there, this is what's changed, and we'll try to do that for you. And
Thank you.
I just make one other statement, because I know this is a big issue. Staff have gone out to the community, whether it's worked right, well, done enough, who knows. But they have not come back to council yet. and told us this is what we've heard. That's what we're waiting for. And when that happens, then we will give them direction on what the next steps are. But we haven't heard that yet. I mean, yes, I've gotten emails, yes, I've gotten everything, but I have not had a report from staff on this is what we heard through public engagement. And when we do, then we'll decide what the next step is. But council has not done that yet. And we do public engagement for a reason. It's because we want to know what you hear, what you have to say. So.
Sorry, I'm just going to add on, just further to my point. I don't think the public engagement process has been working at this point, and to be taking, you've not yet received feedback effectively. So I think that maybe pressing pause would be an appropriate measure at this point so that people get a chance to give their effective feedback.
Well, yeah, and that's what I'm trying to say is council, staff have to come in now and tell me this is what we've heard. I know that there's all kinds of lack of communication and understanding out there, but we have to decide then, okay, what are we going to do next? Yeah, and we haven't done that. Anyway, thank you. Okay, I've got to move on with the agenda. I think we're well past our 15 minutes. I'm sorry.
I understand the open letter has been added to the correspondence portion, and I just want to offer to read the open letter when the time comes to the record.
Well, does council object to her reading the open letter when the time comes?
Thank you.
Is that on the agenda?
It's in the package, yes. I think it is. Yeah, it is, yeah. Yeah. Okay, so we're on to 6.1. No, 4.1. Minutes of the previous meeting, committee of the whole, any errors or omissions?
Motion to approve minute?
Second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? The motion is carried. Okay, 6.1. Request for direction, Community Development, Recreation Department, Small Options Dwelling, Department of Municipal Affairs and Housing. Oh, and I forgot the introduction of our new staff.
Yeah, good morning. Good morning, council. We'll do introductions and then Paul's right into it here. So this is
I bet you.
Paul Riley, our new planner. He's been with us for just about a month now. Paul lives in HRM, but just on our side of it. So he's got a fairly short commute and a couple of young kids, and we're really happy to have him. He's come from the private sector, and so we've had.
What private sector did you work in?
Yeah, turn it over to Paul. Yeah.
We asked questions.
Yeah. Well, I was working for IBI Group for the last nine and a half years. Started in Edmonton, then went to London, Ontario, transferred with them, and then recently transferred to the Halifax area last year. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Anybody else? Anything to point it out?
Adela, you'll be happy to hear that Paul is a musician. So.
Oh, he's a musician. Oh, what do you play?
Guitar.
Guitar?
Yeah.
Guitar, play guitar and sing. Oh yeah, you two did it well.
Sounds good. Well, anyway, thank you all for welcoming me. And
Oh, thank you.
Looking
for
forward to
coming.
it.
Look forward to working with you. Yeah.
And so Paul comes with a lot of experience, which is great. And as evidence of that, he's now going to present item 6.1 as his first piece of business.
Just go into it. As you've seen, there's a request for direction for a potential amendments to the municipal land use bylaw for small option homes is the term. These are 3 to 4 occupant houses for those with disabilities, and it stems from the Department of Municipal Affairs and Housing have recently changed their statement of provincial interest for housing to more broadly allow these types of residential uses without other impediments that sometimes they encounter. So we're asking for direction review and prepare amendments to the municipal land use bylaw to add regulations and provisions in the land use bylaw for these
So
types.
how would that change what currently exists for us?
So essentially what the directive from the province says is that a small options home should be viewed as any other dwelling unit. So these days, the definition of a family has changed drastically over the last 40 years. And so they'd like these to be incorporated more into the community rather than having they've moved away from an institutional type model towards these small facilities that are scattered. So we have there's actually an example that Bonnie Lee is going through here in the village. So this would be a similar type of amendment to just make that similar on the municipal side. Currently, we would have some additional stipulations for something like this that might trigger sort of an institutional type use, even though the scale is very small, and so what the change.
Well, we would consider it a multi-unit dwelling as opposed to a single home.
Right, because, or the fact that there might be staff there attending to the residents or assisting the residents might have it viewed as a commercial use, for example, or something like that. So this is what the province wants to make sure is that it's viewed as a residential use and it's allowed in
Fits within
residential zones
residential
without
zones.
additional permitting requirements. So basically it would have the same requirements that a residential use would have.
So if they've changed, the province has changed it, what options do we have?
Really, I would say we are obligated to go through with, how we make the change, but essentially at the end of the day, our planning strategies are required to be consistent with the provincial statements of
Well,
interest.
that's kind of what I just wanted to make that clear. We don't really have an option, it's just
Right.
the process that we use.
Correct.
When plans are updated, you need to include this now.
Yeah.
In your.
So the draft village bylaw addresses this, although the village bylaw, the way it was already had a little more flexibility in that. So we've got that in the draft, and then this amendment would take care of the municipal plan.
So if we approve that today, then you will make the amendment and bring it back to us so that we see what.
Right, we do our usual public participation process, so we'd schedule a public information meeting, and then we bring it to the Municipal Planning Advisory Committee with the draft amendments, and then we bring it back to council for first reading with the recommendation from the committee.
Well, we have no choice but to get down the road, it's just a question of precisely what it looks like. So is somebody prepared to move that we,
I'll make a motion to approve option one, direct staff to review and prepare amendments to the municipal land use bylaw to add small.
I'll second that.
discussion?
Yes, will this have an impact on the proposed one for Peterson Lane, or is that already?
That's already, my understanding is that's already, I believe they've got their permit, and regardless, that's in the village area, so it's a different bylaw. Yeah.
Good.
To my knowledge, that, the ones we've had already are successes, and by all accounts, they're the best neighbors you could ever want.
Yeah, there already is one in the village.
So this is just to make it easier across the board. Yep.
Moved and seconded, all those in favor? Opposed, motion's carried. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, 6.2, corporate strategic management, business retention and expansion action plan.
All right, good morning, Council.
Martin, look at.
So I'm going to present the Business Retention and Expansion Action Plan for your feedback today. This action plan was prepared by Deloitte with support from economic development staff. Data was gathered through survey and focus groups. The fulsome survey data was presented by Deloitte during a previous council session. The action plan supports top priorities for businesses in the municipality of Chester, which were identified as adequate housing, availability of skilled labor, funding programs, development/permitting processing, and availability of warehouse space. The outline actions underpin these priorities. The plan also features business insights/supporting rationale and practical examples, broken into the short, medium, and long term with associated costs. You all have a copy of the full plan, but I'll go through the action items, highlight one example from each, noting if there are direct costs associated or not. So in the short-term items include communicating municipal initiatives to local businesses, such as disseminating current initiatives impacting the business community via social media, Organize business events and conferences such as business after-hours networking events, which is included in the budget. Provide detailed information on the planning permitting process by developing an accessible information sheet. Meet with business community to determine specific workforce issues. The hiring of a consultant to conduct population and workforce projections is included under the growth plan budget. Enhancing existing asset inventory, such as continuing to update and promote the use of the business directory. The medium-term action plan items include exploring potential business leakages within the municipality, such as conducting a supply chain analysis, not budgeted for, but would be brought forward via RFD at a future date. Connect businesses with relevant services to address labor gaps by establishing a primary contact person at relevant agencies to ensure access to accurate and up-to-date information. Complete a workforce development analysis to potentially establish a program to attract new talent to MOC, which is included in the funds for the growth plan. Improve access to workforce training, such as hosting a job fair, which is also included in the budget.
A lot of us were doing it.
We are, yes. Promote MOC to targeted investors, such as creating business testimonials, highlighting areas of satisfaction in our business communities, also included in the budget. Conduct a review of the vendor licensing process by working with other departments to assess it. Address the lack of housing within municipality via the growth plan, which is also included in the budget. Long-term action plan items include investigate the potential to develop a beautification or property improvement program through an annual beautification grant for business associations, which is not currently in the budget and could be brought forward with estimated budget later. Enhance parking options to facilitate tourism, such as exploring the possibility of providing parking in areas in their off-season, such as schools in the summer. Not included in the budget, but will be brought back to council later. So the motions and options laid out are approve the reaction plan with amendments, reject the reaction plan, and consult with the business community further, or approve the action plan and direct staff to carry out these actions. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer, and I'm receptive to any feedback.
Jerry.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Number one on the action plan, priorities is adequate housing. I don't see any mention of water anywhere in the rest of the document.
So water was in there
in the growth plan.
in the growth plan, so that's why we didn't put it in the business action plan.
Should it be part of the business action plan?
Well, you can't, but it's already in our growth plan.
That is why we. We could put it under long-term, I suppose, if you.
Well, it goes to everything that we discussed.
Yep.
And, you know, I know it's in a lot of other documents, but this is, when you talk about adequate housing, we're not going to have the density we need and the housing we need without water. And that's been very clear. So, I mean, I think it has to be front and center in all of these documents.
Good.
Okay, add to the long term.
Long-term.
Tina.
Thank you. Great job, Olivia. And we're excited to see this, as I'm sure everyone was and is. In terms of the storefront or the downtown beautification property improvement program, actually, I'm reading the title now, the column examples. So examples mean it might not be the be-all end-all. Because when I read that, it says grants, annual beautification grants for business associations. Just wondering, and I don't know, I know it's a little dicey when it comes to individual businesses versus a business association. And I probably should have gone back into a little bit more research. It just came to me right now, but I thought within the town of Liverpool, but it's now the region of Queens, as well as the town of Yarmouth, there were 50-cent dollars available for storefront facade improvement, but that would be directed to individual businesses and not business associations. So I'm just wondering if we could do maybe a little bit looking into that.
I can look into that, yeah.
Makes sense. We may not be able to do it, I don't know, but I'm just thinking.
Back in the old Village Square days.
That's what I'm going with, actually. Yeah,
Used
the
to
old
do
Main
that.
Street program,
Yeah.
the Village Square, yeah.
Shelburne.
Shelburne, yeah,
Shelburne.
Yarmouth, Shelburne.
So it's an option that should be looked at, yeah, because
Yeah.
we used to do it way back. Back in
Give
the
us a thought.
Main Street
Definitely
Village
listen
Square
to
days. Yeah. Anyone else, any questions, comments? want to approve it as with the few little changes that we made?
So moved.
Seconder?
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. I'm going to suggest that we move to 7.4 so that so we can deal with it so that in case they don't all want to stay here all day. So if you want to come up, the letter from the Chester Coalition. I have that somewhere.
I have copies of the letter. I don't know if
We do
everyone
have
has
copies,
one.
yes, we do.
Okay. And I'll just update you then, there's 597 signatures and counting at this time. So that's about 70% of the village population. Thank you.
Oh, you introduce yourself and
Is there a microphone on? Because it
she can press a button right there.
right there and just move it a little closer to you.
Yeah, but introduce yourself and civic address,
Certainly.
just for the record.
Everyone can hear me?
Not any
better.
Can you move it a little closer, maybe? Just tap it, see if it's working. There you go, yeah.
It is.
You just have to get closer.
We are getting better.
We're getting,
Better.
Yeah, we're updating all this stuff too.
Okay, I will try to be as loud as possible. My name is Kristen Dabrowski. I live at 188 Central Street, which is right next door. I also have a business right in the village. I'm present today to read an open letter, which has been endorsed by 597 individuals in less than 2 weeks. Dear Municipality of Chester Council, we are writing to express our concerns with the progression of the Village of Chester planning document review process and the proposed village plan to date. We call upon Council to take immediate action on behalf of Chester citizens by requesting further undertaking of professional due diligence and public consultation by the Municipal Planning Department. In particular, we ask the Council work with municipal planning to ensure appropriate steps are taken to 1, adapt the proposed plan to address the concerns of residents, 2, engage independent professionals to conduct any research or consultation required to ensure Chester residents are provided with an informed and transparent proposed village plan, and 3, allow for further adequate public consultation of the revised proposed plan prior to allowing the matter to proceed to a final hearing. Core planning process concerns, timelines, and communication. According to the municipal published timelines, the village plan review commenced in December 2019. The majority of the village plan review was conducted throughout the global pandemic, a period in which society was focused on survival. Throughout this period, traditional forms of community interaction, engagement, and communication were severely restricted by the requirement to stay home. As the community then transitioned out of rigid pandemic restrictions, the village was faced with further significant socioeconomic burdens, such as rapid rising rates of inflation and severe weather events, which continue to require the immediate attention and resources of Chester residents. Given the novel social conditions during this period, it was pertinent that the municipal village plan review communication strategies and timelines proactively ensure that all residents were made aware of the proposed village plan and were given fair and reasonable opportunity to express their reviews and receive assurances that their voices had been heard before the plan neared finalization. On June 22, 2023, Council approved the public consultation meeting schedule, a key component of the public consultation process, with less than 5 weeks' notice. No mailouts were sent to the village residents advising them of the scheduled meetings, and the voluminous proposed plan documents were not made publicly available until July 5, 2023, less than 3 full weeks before the first scheduled meeting. Given the municipality has mailed out notices and surveys to the entire municipality without issue on several occasions, such as the 2020 Coastal Action Resident Survey, which was sent to 6,100 addresses, along with prepaid return envelopes and further reminder postcards, there is no justifiable reason as to why the much smaller village core resident population of approximately 800 people were not provided with mailing notice of the public consultation meetings. The 4 scheduled public meetings were all then scheduled within the same 2-week period, which restricted attendance opportunities for many residents and allowed little time for residents to reflect on the meetings or share future dated meeting dates with those in the community. One of the meetings took place immediately after the village had experienced extreme weather conditions, and the 4th supplemental meeting was scheduled with little notice and was not contained on the original public posters and involved a last-minute change of meeting location. The public meetings were also not clearly signed from the roadside prior or during the meetings, which limited opportunities for residents to walk in or drop into the meetings as they moved through the community. The planning department also failed to ensure all meetings were recorded so that there was a clear and objective record of meeting discussions. It was also not made clear how objective records of the meeting would be reported to the Planning Advisory Committee, related municipal departments, or relevant stakeholders. Consultation process. At the meeting, the planning department cited that approximately 25 to 35 individuals were in attendance at each session, with many of the attendees at each meeting being repeat attendees. This indication suggests that a significant majority of the village's 800+ residents were not adequately informed or given opportunity to attend the meetings. Chester is known to have a community of highly engaged residents, particularly in its village core, and given its history of high response rates to requests for public engagement, as clearly indicated by published response data from various public consultation projects, including but not limited to the 2017 CBCL water study and the 2020 Coastal Action Resident Water Survey, the low public meeting records serve as clear confirmation that the planning department did not appropriately schedule or communicate their public engagement sessions. At the meeting, the public were provided with little to no confirmation on what independent professional reviews had been undertaken to inform the planning department in their work prior to them preparing their proposed plan. The only clearly communicated professional preliminary study conducted was an architecture study conducted by FBM, for which the explicit report does not appear to be published to the public. The public meeting presentations also didn't clearly express how the planning department incorporated the findings of the study into the proposed plan, and a representative of FPM was not made available to provide independent feedback on how the proposed plan aligns with the outcomes of the study. Furthermore, the municipality relied on mailed-out village plan surveys as part of their preliminary public consultation process, but no specific resident response data was shared with the public at these meetings. The planning department also did not provide explicit explanations on what portions of the proposed plan, if any, were reflective of the values and expressions made by residents in their surveys. The planning department also did not have any representatives from other municipal or provincial departments, such as Public Works, present for the public meetings. This was problematic given the planning department's representations that the Public Works Department would play a critical role in responding to the resource-related implications resulting from the proposed plan. The planning department also failed to invite any independent environmental engineers, such as hydrologists, to the meeting to facilitate dialogue between the residents and the planning department on relevant resource considerations relating to the proposed village plan. This is of notable concern given that several resource management studies previously conducted for the municipality clearly indicate that the village's current resources could not sustain further development or increase density, while the planning department have cited economic growth and development as the current prominent underpinning of their proposed plan. The Municipal Planning Department has stated in published timelines that it is their objective to complete the village plan review by end of 2023. Throughout the duration of the public consultations, municipal staff and a council representative made expressions of their personal desires to propel this project forward in an imminent manner, with Heather Archibald, Senior Development Officer, candidly declaring at the August 3rd, 2023 meeting, "We want this to be done." These expressions were made at the public meetings by Planning Department employees, while the Planning Department also put much blame on some of the village's current and in-progress development concerns on an apparent lack of foresight by the municipality and the community at the last planning review. Given that it is their view that much of today's village controversies are a result of yesterday's complacency, we would think that the planning committee would be dedicated to taking the necessary time to ensure the current planning review is founded in adequate research and integration of residents' insights. It is our respectful view that this project simply has not been adequately assessed to allow for a final hearing at this time. Much of Chester has not been properly informed on the specific changes proposed by planning, nor have they been provided with tangible data to address the substantial environmental and community concerns that arise as a result of the municipality's proposed village plan. Core proposed plan areas of concern, village values. When asked about the motivating factors behind the village plan review, Mr. Garth Sturtevant resolutely cited economic growth and development as his leading objective in preparing the current village plan. At the public meetings, the residents of Chester clearly and repeatedly expressed substantially different values for the village plan, including responsible resource management and preservation of Chester's current architecture, heritage, and culture. At the meetings, it was clearly expressed by village residents that Chester's essence and economy is founded in preservation of character homes and coastal charm. Residents of Chester are not seeking the cheap institutionalization of the village core and are instead seeking planning provisions that ensure any renovation or new build in the village will only enhance the existing landscape. The village's historical and coastal properties and use of quality innkeeping and sustainable building materials is what has given Chester its reputation as one of Nova Scotia's greatest architectural treasures. Chester residents are seeking a municipal plan strategy that will ensure that the village maintains its legacy as a community built on beauty and history. People travel both domestically and internationally to visit Chester for its unique vernacular, and preservation of its current form and structures is essential in ensuring that Chester retains its appeal as both a home to residents and a tourist attraction to many. Village residents also indicated at the public consultation meeting that those who have invested their life to Chester in maintaining their homes and contributing to the community are deserving of having the enjoyment of their properties and property values preserved. As such, it is essential that the village plan ensures that any changes to zoning or development allowances will not dilute the value or enjoyment of existing properties and will ensure protection against the privatization of publicly enjoyed spaces, such as access to the water from Chester's various harbors. We note that careful consideration should be made in relation to the feedback offered by the residents at these public meetings, given that these are the individuals with lived experience relating to the resource concerns in the village. They are the ones with the innate knowing of the invaluable role that Chester's existing landscape, such as our picturesque waterfront peninsula, plays in attracting interest to Chester Village. It is our respectful request that Council use their authority to ensure that the Planning Department adapts their proposed village plan to reflect and incorporate the clearly expressed values of Chester residents, which includes preserving Chester's existing resources, heritage, and culture. Water. The public consultation meetings confirmed that the Village of Chester values environment and sustainable resource management. management. Water quality and quantity remain a substantial concern of residents of Chester, and as such, any village planning strategy must take a proactive approach in evaluating potential erosion of water supply within the community. The residents' expressed concerns surrounding water and septic resource management are not unfounded, given that quantitative studies back to 1967 have indicated that the village does not have adequate long-term water supply to meet the demands of residents and businesses. Despite this, Mr. Sturtevant's proposed plan focuses on increased density within the community and ignores the undeniably consistent conclusions offered by various water resource studies conducted for the municipality. Chester does not have adequate water supply to support the existing needs of the village, let alone new demand as a result of increased density or development. Any plan which allows for the potential of significant development and increased density in the village core is not only short-sighted, but also reckless. At the public community presentations, Mr. Sturtevant, the lead senior planner responsible for the village review, admitted that he had not conducted or incorporated any quantitative studies on the impacts of the proposed increased density in preparing his plan, nor had his department engaged any third-party professionals, such as environmental engineers, to provide the village with an independent assessment on the viability of the proposed plan. This lack of quantitative analysis is particularly concerning as the August 2017 Water Needs and Options Preliminary Assessment prepared for the village by CBCL Limited, consulting engineers, indicated that approximately 1/4 of the sample participants experienced water supply issues. In the executive summary to the report, CBCL concluded, the survey results and collected water quality data indicate the water quantity and quality problems are common throughout the village of Chester. Many well owners are required to observe conservation measures, and several properties are without consistent supply. Shortages show that water resources are stressed in localized parts of the community, and that the potential for further development or increased density within the existing dwellings is limited. The report repeatedly concluded that the village core could not sustain increased density or development, and also confirmed that in a 2016 drought, several residents experienced water shortages to such an extent that they were without tap water for periods of 1 week to 4 months. The report further stated, existing climate models suggest that the rate and frequency of extreme weather events is increasing in Nova Scotia, which would indicate that drought events such as those experienced in 2016 are likely to be repeated. Climate and well data compiled by NSDNR appears to support this likelihood. Periodic intensive reductions in recharge to shallow aquifers in Chester are likely to continue to cause shortages, potentially with increased frequency and/or duration in future years. While Mr. Sturtevant repeatedly indicated resource management was not within the scope of his role as a municipal planner, the Canadian Institute of Planners defines the planning profession as the scientific, aesthetic, and orderly disposition of land, resources, facilities, and services with a view to securing physical, economic, and social efficiency for the health and well-being of urban and rural communities. It is a planner's very role to create and develop a responsible and sustainable plan. And a village plan that has not considered resource issues, especially in a village known for its considerable water shortages, is not a plan that looks to secure the physical, economic, and social efficiency and the health and well-being of the community. We ask Council to affirm planning's role in ensuring that the village plan presented is one founded in professional integrity through adequate consideration of resource management, quantitative data, and independent review. Residents' concerns relating to the general lack of quantitative studies or independent review of the proposed village plan is not limited to resource management, but also extends to the broader nature of the plan and its proposed implementation. Given that poor planning could substantially erode the integrity of the entire village and its resources, it is essential that the plan be carefully considered by a diverse set of professionals. This ensures control over the development of the plan is not unduly centralized and allows for the final plan to reflect a diverse mosaic of resident and professional voices. A particular area of concern was the lack of any assessment on the ability of our current emergency services infrastructure to support the potential density proposed by the planning department. Given that the province just experienced grave wildfires and Chester has been known to lose several noteworthy structures to fire throughout the years, it would only be responsible to have the proposed village plan changes presented to emergency service personnel so that they can provide their professional opinion on the potential risks associated with the proposed plan. The proposed plan must also be assessed in light of the municipality's obligations to its residents under the Municipal Government Act, which cites in its preamble that municipalities are a responsible order of government accountable to the people. Reviewing the proposed plan in light of this 300+ page act, as well as other relevant provincial and federal legislation, including but not limited to any environmental well and septic regulations and national and provincial building codes, is essential. Such an undertaking requires specific expertise and should be done responsibly and thoroughly to ensure that Council is not presented with a plan for approval that is in conflict with the municipality's broader obligations to adhere to and enforce laws for the benefit of the people. Throughout the public meeting process, Mr. Sturdivant indicated some of the lack of research to date is due to the municipal planning having a small team that is already overburdened with their current workload. If the municipality is already organizationally burdened by the current demand from Chester residents, it is pertinent that the introduction of any proposed plan provisions are professionally reviewed and introduced in a manner that will ensure that the government and village will not be unduly burdened with under-resourced population growth and development. It is our view that the municipality, village businesses, and residents all benefit from further foresight and consultation. We believe a proactive, unified approach among council, village residents, the Planning Advisory Committee, the Planning Department, and other stakeholders is the best path forward in ensuring that Chester's legacy is maintained. It is a privilege to live and work in Chester, and we will all benefit from a sustainable and safe village plan. A responsible council is a good council, and with that, we ask you to join in our efforts to ensure Chester's legacy is founded in community and environmental integrity. We respectfully request Council commits to community confidence by directing the Planning Department to engage in responsible research, revision, and further public engagement before presenting their final proposed village plan. In social consciousness and community, the Chester Coalition of Common Sense Citizens. Thank you.
Well thought out, and I can only say that they have not brought back, staff have not brought back to council the comments they heard currently from the public. We have all kinds of correspondence. All of that will be taken into consideration when we determine what the next steps are. And at this moment, that's all I can tell you.
I'll just clarify for you, at the public engagement meetings, Garth Sturdivant was asked multiple times how objective feedback was going to be provided, and he repeatedly directed that if we wanted any further public consultation, engagement, that we should write to council and ask for that now. So that's essentially was his feedback. Yeah. So what we're asking for is before he presents a final plan that he comes back. He's
not going to present a final plan. What he's going to come back and do first thing that's going to happen is tell us what he heard during the public consultation. then council will direct him as to what the next steps are.
Right, and we just wanted to ensure that the community voice was clear so that when you're presented with that information, you're also aware that there's 600 other individuals out there who had feedback to provide, and this is a reflection of their feedback.
We'll take all that into consideration.
Thank you.
There is nobody else speaking, that's the end of it. There's no other public speaking.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were inviting me up and I was the last one.
No, the public session is over.
I have one question. I'm not sure, where'd you go?
Right there.
Second row.
Right,
Sorry.
Kristen, yes. Did you pen the letter?
Pardon?
Did you write?
It's a reflection of the village.
Yeah, I just didn't know who wrote it, but I have a question. Did the Chester Coalition of Common Sense Citizens group, have they given any thought to whether the village should actually have a municipal water supply? Have they thought about that or what their opinion is on that? I'm curious.
I'm not going to provide any specific position on that issue.
Well, it seems very relevant.
I certainly know they want a sustainable water supply.
Yes. It seems like the two things seem to be touching one another. And it's something as a counselor we've wrestled with. In 2017, as you pointed out, we did a study and did a plebiscite, and the majority of residents said they didn't want water supply. But then as we try to make planning efforts in the village, then it becomes that we get a lot of feedback that it is it's like the predominant issue.
Yeah,
So we're trying to plan infrastructure, and we're trying to think like, should we bring infrastructure into Chester? Is that going to benefit the residents of Chester or not?
So what I can offer is, that point was raised at one of the public meetings. I think it was stated by Mr. Wells, I'm not entirely sure, where they said, well, we voted on water and you voted that you didn't want water. And it was clarified very clearly by one of the residents at that meeting that, first of all, the vote was, I understand, very close, but the vote for no was against the proposed water plan at that time. So that it was a supply from a certain location that was believed to not be sustainable, and that was what caused that vote to go the way it does. What I think people are concerned about now with the water issue is that we're saying we're going to potentially approve increased density within the village core without having properly first researched and addressed water sustainability issues. So I think what a lot of the village is looking for, I can't speak for everyone, is to ensure that we're not going to put in place a village plan that will result in water issues. We don't want reactivity, we want proactivity. We want to be informed and clear on how water concerns are going to be addressed if we're going to increase density. Otherwise, we probably cannot increase density at the current time because we don't have sustainable water resource right now.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, we ready to move on?
Yes.
Okay, we're on 6.3, which is a draft letter to municipal affairs regarding feedback on proposed service exchange, memorandum of understanding. Did everybody get a chance to read it or no?
Yeah.
So there are I don't know if you all received it or not, but there are a couple of other municipalities over the last couple of days that have written and expressed similar concerns. And yeah, so we're not alone.
I apologize if I've received that, but I don't know if I have. So if we haven't, could we receive those? Okay, so
It's on the desk,
that's
yeah.
perfect. So obviously getting in here.
We just want to know if it's all right when you sign it and send it.
No, oh no, our response, perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, but the other ones,
We have received or not received, the other?
I don't know, I got them, I forwarded them there, and she put one copy of it on your desk, I mean, they keep coming, I get them, I
So
don't
as they
know if
come,
everybody else is getting them or not.
Can we receive them?
Yes.
Perfect.
It was just received yesterday.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'll sign it and send it?
Yes.
Okay,
Thanks.
we're gonna take a 10-minute break.
Okay.